Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kilowatt, a podcast about electric vehicles, renewable energy, autonomous driving, and much, much more. Man, this mic is really close to my face. My name is Bodhi, and I am your host. And on today's episode, we've got some news we're going to discuss. But before we do that, I do want to ask yet again if you have questions on how to think like a first responder during an emergency. Please send those questions to me because honestly, I feel like maybe I might be dumbing it down a little too much, and which, that honestly sounds very rude. But I think the things that I'm talking about might be too obvious. So I really need your help on this. So send me an email. It's Bodhi, Bodie, at 918digital.com. No question is dumb. So please send me your questions. I will answer them in the email, but I will also somehow incorporate that into the presentation. All right. This episode is brought to you by the following patrons. Jerbo, who pays twice, and even though I ask him not to, he continues to do so. Gregory D., Bart B., Bruce M., and Sean. Thank you to each of you for making this show possible, this particular episode possible. And hopefully the episode will be good enough to put your name on. This won't be the case for every episode, but hopefully this one is for Jerbo, Gregory, Bart, Bruce, and Sean. Hopefully this episode will actually be worth your patronage. Man, I really feel like I'm setting myself up for failure. Let's get to the EV news. The 2026 Polestar 4 is officially on sale in the United States. This vehicle is actually manufactured in Busan, South Korea, not here in the US. I think Polestar has a factory. I think it's in South Carolina. That's where the Polestar 3 is manufactured, not where the Polestar 4 is manufactured. So the Polestar 4 will still be affected by tariffs, but not as much as if it were like built in China, for instance. In terms of some of the features that you'll find in the Polestar 4, you'll get a 0 to 60 time of 3.7 seconds or 6.9 seconds if you want to spring for the two least expensive trims. 100 kilowatt battery across all trims, but the single motor versions will get 300 miles of range, and the dual motor versions will get 270 miles of range. U.S. customers will have 5 trim levels available to purchase. The vehicle starts at $56,400 and tops out just under $73,000. Deliveries are expected sometime this fall, and on top of all of the things that I talked about, just about the car itself, you get that really cool Polestar design sense, as well as all the cool technology that goes into the Polestar vehicles. So if you're in the market, I think this is a good one to take a look at. Ford is recalling 30,000 F-150 Lightnings over a suspension nut that might fall off. So this nut is located on the upper control arm where that meets the ball joint. It may not have been. It doesn't look like it was tightened properly at the factory. So if you own an F-150 Lightning and you notice a vibration when you're driving, or you hear clunks and rattles when you go over bumps, you may be affected. And if you are affected, Ford will definitely reach out to you. The 2026 Chevy Silverado EV work truck will start at just under $55,000. And this vehicle will come with a range of 286 miles. The work truck extended edition, or extended range, if you're interested in more miles, gives you 424 miles of range, but will cost just over $68,000. And at the moment, this truck would qualify for the $7,500 federal tax credit here in the U.S. When I say at the moment, is because that could possibly go away soon. Putting this vehicle just over $60,000 for 424 miles of range. Pretty good. Especially when you consider the next truck that has over 400 miles of range, like in price, is the Rivian R1T with Max Pack. and that vehicle starts just under $84,000. So while $60,000 or $68,000 is a lot of money, kind of seems like a steal. Moving on to our next story, but staying on the subject of GM, GM is currently selling 13 all-electric vehicles in Canada, and in Q1 of 2025, it was the number one EV seller in Canada, which is congratulations to GM because they weren't doing superb, let's see, 2 or 3 years ago, and they are really, everything's coming up millhouse for GM in this case. So their top EV sales are the following. So they sold 1,892 Chevy Equinox EVs, 894 Silverado EVs. The Cadillac Lyriq sold 720. The new Cadillac Optic sold 615. And then, the rest of their EV models sold a few here and there. But that brings a grand total of 5,750 EVs sold in Q1 2025. GM EVs sold in Q1 2025, which made them the number one EV seller. Their sales actually grew 252% year over year. So while I wouldn't say 5,750 is a huge number, it's really good for GM. So congratulations to GM. And I think, you know, Tesla could probably take a lot of credit for GM sales. Um, Also, this is not an easy EV market, despite the fact that, all the stuff that happened in Q1 with Elon and Tesla in Canada. You also have to kind of look at a lot of the incentives went away, provincial incentives as well as federal incentives for EVs. So it's not as cut and dry as, well, I don't like this EV company anymore, so I'm going to go to this other EV company and still get the same incentives. A lot of that stuff went away. Next up, we have some BYD news. So BYD stands for Build Your Dreams, and that might not necessarily be what's happening in Brazil. BYD and two of its contractors are being sued over labor violations. So BYD is building a factory in Brazil. Two of its contractors apparently brought over some Chinese workers, at least 220 Chinese workers, to work on building the factory. The lawsuit is alleging that the two contractors, and through that, BYD's association with those two contractors, is alleging slave-like working conditions and human trafficking. So in December of 2024, authorities rescued over 220 Chinese workers who were reportedly brought to Brazil under false pretenses. The workers were living in overcrowded settlements with insufficient sleeping arrangements and inadequate sanitary facilities. So in some of the pictures in the article, it shows a small room packed with bunk beds. There was, I don't know, I think you could see probably 5 bunk beds in a very small room, and then you could see a small table. I'm not sure what was behind the camera, but just from that picture, it looked very, very cramped. The living conditions were poor hygiene conditions. Bathrooms were not separated by sex, and there weren't enough toilet seats, which is awful. I mean, for every toilet, it comes with a toilet seat. I don't know why you wouldn't have one, but there's about one toilet for every 31 people. Workers had to wash their clothes in the bathroom sink because they didn't provide facilities to clean their clothes. Workers were also allegedly forced to work while having up to 70% of their salaries withheld and not given to them. Their passports were confiscated. It sounds like their visas were not in order when they arrived in Brazil. If employees wanted to leave, they would have to pay a high fee for breaking that contract. Employees were also subject to long working hours with no rest. On top of all that, the report states that workers were forced to work under unsafe work conditions, and workplace accidents did occur because of this. As you can imagine, this kind of thing, as somebody who is a foreigner in a country like Brazil, like Chinese folks, there might be some of these workers that speak Portuguese, but I doubt there's very many of them. You take their passport, you limit their money. They're not really that really restricts freedom, um, and it makes them dependent on their employer. BYD has stated that it's cooperating with authorities and is committed to adhering to Brazilian and international laws, which include labor laws. This and other incidents has led to increased scrutiny of the labor practices of different Chinese companies like BYD, and included that would be the oversight of their contractors that they work with. Uh, it's not uncommon for employees in China to work 12-hour days, 6 days a week. When I went to Thailand in March, the gentleman who sat next to me, poor guy, it was an overnight flight, and he got plane sick or motion sick while we were flying. During the times that he did sleep, he slept on my shoulder. And if you know me in real life, I don't like being touched ever. So this was very uncomfortable for me, but I felt so bad for this guy, I just let him sleep on my shoulder. However, when he finally got some Dramamine or whatever he had, meclizine, whatever they gave him, um, he started feeling better, and we kind of struck up a conversation. And he worked for a pretty cool company in Shenzhen. And while we were sitting there chatting, the subject came around to work, like how many hours a day they work. And he was an engineer, and he confirmed, like, it's common to work 12-hour days, 6 days a week. And he didn't seem to have an issue with this. And for him, this was completely normal. For me, I work 48 to 72 hours a week, but I do that in one chunk. And this seems like a terrible schedule when it comes to, you know, work-life balance and spending time with your family. This gentleman and his wife were actually, I think she was an engineer as well, but she was in the like product marketing side of things at a different company. But they have a young child at home, and if you're working 12 hours a day, how much time do you get to spend with your kid? Not very much. So I did find that to be interesting. The lawsuit, back to the actual story, is seeking $50 million in, I should say 50 million US dollars in moral damages and individual restitution for the workers. Uh, you know, because a contractor's bad does not necessarily mean the company that contractor is working for is bad, but the contractor, in this case BYD, the company, in this case BYD, does have a responsibility to make sure that the contractors that they use are, you know, good humans. They're following labor laws in the country, and on top of that, they're treating people with kindness and respect, and paying them their full salary, and not holding them against their will. Now, they still need to go through the court system to see if anything comes of this. So all of this is alleged at this point, and none of it is fact, and until the courts go through this. But you know, uh, if I owned a multi-international company, I would never want anything close to this from contractors. Those contractors would be fired so quickly, because it tarnishes your brand, it tarnishes your name. And I'm not 100% sure where I read this part, because I went back and I couldn't find it. But one of the articles I read over this is, I think it was BYD said, we probably should have made sure that they were using Brazilian laborers to build this factory. To which I say, yeah. I mean, it's not to say that you can't have experts come in from different countries to build your factory, but when you're bringing your whole workforce in from a different country, there's probably, and I don't know if it's the whole workforce, we'll say a significant part of your workforce in from a different country. It seems like there might be some shenanigans going on there. All right. Um, let's see here. I did have another BYD story, and I think I might have skipped over it. So let's do this. A BYD dealership in China near the Shandong province, which is close to Beijing, has shut down over 20 locations. So this is an auto dealership. They shut down 20 locations, and they left over 1,000 customers who prepaid for services kind of in a lurch. Some of these services include a 3-year joint insurance package. Now, I don't know if this means auto insurance or if this is like an extended warranty. I'm guessing it's the extended warranty, but I don't know. But some people paid for maintenance packages. Some people paid for lifetime service agreements. And as of April of 2025, customers have not received the promised refunds. And it continues to get worse here. Employees of the dealerships were also affected, and there are reports saying that the employees have not been paid in 6 months. So the dealership says the closures are due to BYD's dealer policy adjustments that have happened over the last 2 years and banks having conservative financing policies. We'll get back to the banks here in just a second. BYD says, nah. And if I had to translate that, I don't speak Chinese, but if I had to translate that, I would say BYD is maintaining that its dealer policies have been consistent and stable, and actually blames the dealership for rapid expansion and leveraging themselves too much to expand, and some internal management failures. That's what BYD is saying the reason for the closures are. So going back to the conservative financing policies of the bank, I take that if you look at BYD's explanation as this dealership couldn't get more loans to continue operating, not that people who buy BYD vehicles would not be able to finance their vehicles, right? Or they would have to have really good credit to be able to finance their vehicles. I don't think that's what they're saying here. I think it's that the dealership itself couldn't get additional financing. As we hear more information on both of those BYD stories, I'll make sure to keep you updated. Now, this is our final story in our EV news segment. A few weeks ago, we talked about a congressman who, in the U.S., who proposed a $250 fee for EVs, an annual fee for EVs. It's $100 for hybrids, and this is to make up lost revenue in gas tax. This money is supposed to go towards building highways and infrastructure here in the U.S., which I think most everybody who drives a vehicle is appreciative that we have, for the most part, really good highways and freeways to drive on, right? I don't think anybody is going to balk at paying taxes, especially when, the roads, for the most part, are really good here in the U.S. Like, I haven't been everywhere in the U.S., but my experience is the federal highways system is really good, so I don't have a problem paying taxes. But what I do have a problem is paying more taxes than my internal combustion engine counterparts. So I went to ChatGPT, and honestly, I did not figure this out on my own to verify that ChatGPT was right, but I feel like that's probably pretty close. So I went to ChatGPT and I said, if I drove a gas version of the Chevy Equinox and I drove 12,000 miles a year, how much money in taxes, federal tax, would I pay each year? And according to ChatGPT, I would pay $82 in federal tax each year. And that's, significantly less than the $250 annual fee that they're proposing for EVs. And then I went and I said, well, how much would I pay in federal tax and Arizona tax each year? And ChatGPT said $166, which is still not great when you're looking at $250. I mean, it's great for internal combustion engine folks, but not great for EV owners when you're looking at a $250 bill. We're still significantly higher, even if you combine the EV tax or the gas tax for the state of Arizona with the gas tax for the federal government. So it seems like this is a little high. Now, I went back, asked ChatGPT one more question. I said, how many miles would I have to drive to pay $250 just in federal taxes. Not in Arizona's taxes, just federal taxes. How many miles would I have to drive? And according to ChatGPT, I would have to drive 36,685 miles to pay $250 in federal taxes. This seems excessive to me. I'm not going to drive, or let's just say in the 34 years that I've been driving, I have never driven 36,000 miles in a year. Even when I delivered pizzas at 21 years old, I didn't drive 36,000 miles in a year. So this is a pretty big hit for EV drivers. Now, this annual fee is currently in the big, beautiful budget bill that it's passed the House. It's currently at the Senate. Who knows what changes will be made in the Senate, and then it's got to go back to the House again, and then it's got to be signed by the president. So this might get lost in the shuffle, but then again, it might not. And like I said, I don't think that anybody's going to argue that we should pay, or EV owners should pay their fair share in road tax. However, I drive about 12,000 miles in my car. Right now, I've had my car for a little over 2 years, and it has 23,000, almost 24,000 miles on it. So that's pretty accurate. I shouldn't have to pay $250 for that. Somebody who drives significantly less than me should not have to pay $250. It's just not justified. So, having said that, that completes our EV segment. Before we move on to our Tesla segment, I do want to let you know, if you go to supportkilowatt.com, that will take you to a page on my website that will show you the different ways you can support the show. You can support through Patreon or Supercast, and there are links on that page to take you to the appropriate platform that you want to support the show. And when you support the show, you get a good feeling in your heart knowing that you're supporting me and the work that I do, but you can also rest assured that all of the money that you put into the show goes back into the show. I don't take any of the money that comes from Supercast or Patreon to pay my own bills, right? I have a job. That's what pays my bills. The show gets advertising. That just helps pay for the show again. The show can be very expensive. So being able to take an opportunity to go to Vegas, which is not cheap, and go to CES and that kind of thing, that's just what the show helps out for. And I recently got a teleprompter to help with interviews. So I'm looking forward to that. So all of the money goes back into the show. But I should probably stop talking about this and move on and talk about some Tesla news. First up, I'm not sure if this is actual new news, but it is news. Tesla has a plan to localize its battery supply chain within the United States. These plans include refining their own lithium, which they do in Texas, producing cathode active materials, building anodes, coating electrodes, assembling battery cells. Obviously, they do that here as well, and integrating cells into their vehicles. Elon says that localizing the supply chain is crucial to mitigating geopolitical risks, to which the internet replied with a loud duh. Although I shouldn't have done that. This isn't easy, and this is actually really hard. And this is actually one of the things that I think Tesla does really well. So in all seriousness, I actually wish them luck. Next up, in 2020, the New Jersey Turnpike Authority and Tesla signed a 5-year agreement, and Tesla agreed to supply DC fast chargers or superchargers along the New Jersey Turnpike. Well, the NJTA has decided not to renew that agreement. This means that 64 supercharger stalls covering 8 different stations along the turnpike, which I believe is about 100 miles long when it comes to, if you combine all the roads together, those will all have to be removed. Instead, the NJTA is working exclusively with Irish company Apple Green Electric Tesla did make a request to like coexist with Apple Green electric chargers, and then the NJTA turned them down, and they said, nope, we're going to go exclusively with Apple Green electric. So that means Tesla has to remove 64 supercharger stalls. Now, it doesn't seem like this came as a huge surprise to Tesla because they have installed 116 supercharger stalls along the New Jersey Turnpike in high traffic areas. So, I'm sure some of these were in place before the agreement. Some of these were put in place during the agreement. So this is you'll still be able to charge your Tesla along the New Jersey Turnpike. Right now, it remains to be seen how reliable the Apple Green electric chargers will be. Well, just kind of time will tell. Like I believe at this point, we don't even know if they're going to use NACS charging connectors or plugs, or if they're going to use CCS, or if they're going to use a combination. We just don't know at this point. It's up to Apple Green Electric to stand these chargers up and then actually maintain and support them. So we'll see what happens there. I honestly don't have any reason to believe that they won't, but charging networks can be difficult. Elon called this move on X corruption by the New Jersey Turnpike Authority. And it could be. It's hard to know for sure. Lately, Elon's been calling everything fake or corrupt. Or not everything, because that would make me hyperbolic. He has been very hyperbolic in his statements, I believe, recently. And, if you cry wolf enough times, people just stop listening. So it very well could be corrupt. I don't know, but it's probably not. By the way, this is not a personality trait exclusive to Elon. There are all kinds of people in my life that are way too hyperbolic and do this kind of thing as well. So it's just annoying. Anywho, Adam Jonas of Morgan Stanley is warning investors to temper their expectations for Tesla's robotaxi launch. What it all seems to come down to is that we're going to need more detailed information before drawing conclusions about the service's potential impact. On the opposite side of the spectrum, Dan Ives of Wedbush has called the robotaxi launch a golden age of autonomous for Tesla. I think I'm on Adam Jonas's side on this. Not to say that I don't think that Tesla's robotaxi is going to be successful. I'm just saying we should be cautious. We should go into this with the understanding that Tesla is going to make mistakes, but not every mistake is a failure, and not every failure is an actual failure. You know what I mean? So yeah, I agree with Adam Jonas on this. Let's be cautious. Let's learn a little bit more about what's going on with the robotaxi service. Let them cook a little bit, and we can come back and reevaluate. And our final story, Tesla is lobbying U.S. lawmakers to establish a national regulatory framework for autonomous vehicles that will replace each state's regulations. So one of the things they want to change is right now there's a cap of 2,500 test vehicles for an autonomous driving fleet, right? If you've heard Elon talk in the last few weeks, you've heard him say that he wants to scale up robotaxi as soon as possible. It's very difficult to scale up when you have a cap of 2,500 vehicles in your fleet that can, do full self-driving. Now, I feel really confident that Tesla would absolutely love to take the burden off of lawmakers' hands and help them write those regulations. However, I am a little bit concerned about that. I do think that lawmakers should definitely have people from all over the autonomous driving industry with giving input, and then based on that input, they should write a regulatory framework. But in my opinion, it should not be a regulatory framework that supersedes states' frameworks. I think that it's really important to have a regulatory framework, and we might even have this now, I don't know, that is a minimum standard for autonomous vehicles to operate, not like this is the standard. I don't think we should be precluding states from making stricter regulations if they want that kind of thing. The United States is a big place with all sorts of different terrains, weather, and congestion, and, you know, all the stuff that goes into driving a car, different road types, the whole bit. So, what may work in Tempe, Arizona, where we got big, wide roads and lots of people and all that stuff, may not work in the community that I actually grew up in, which is Nikiski, Alaska, where a lot of the roads, first of all, Nikiski's in the middle of nowhere, but a lot of the roads are still dirt roads, and vice versa. What might work in Nikiski probably won't work in Tempe, at least, on a grand scale. So I do think the state should have their own right to regulate autonomous driving how they see fit and how it makes sense for that state. But I do think it's important for the federal government to have a reasonable minimum set of regulations, I guess. Not to say that it should be so stringent that we can't have innovation, but it also shouldn't be so loose that it's just the Wild West in terms of autonomous driving. I think there needs to be a lot of reporting, which Tesla's not going to like the fact that they should have to do a lot of paperwork. But anytime there's an incident, I do think we should know about it. Now, do you have to do the same amount of incident if a robotaxi bumps into another car while backing out of a parking space that they do if somebody is involved in a accident and somebody dies? No, I think it should be reported, but it doesn't necessarily have to be like pages on pages and pages of paperwork. Anyway, what do you think about autonomous driving regulations? Send me an email, Bodhi, BODIE at 918digital.com. All right, everybody, that is it for me today. On Friday's episode, we are going to have the founders of Arc Motors, a Canadian company that is converting internal combustion engine vehicles into EVs. It was a really cool talk, and I think you're going to enjoy it. I certainly learned some things, and I really enjoyed chatting with the founders, who are, in fact, brother and sister, which I love my sisters and my brother, but I'm not sure I could start a business with them. So, yeah, kind of an interesting dynamic there, but it seems to have worked out. And oddly enough, they have a very compatible set of skill sets to run a business. So, anyway, that will be Friday's show. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you on Friday.